idea is that you keep buying. I'm going to rain on some people's parades today about compound interest. The only true compound interest that's out there are. So the solution is.
I'm here with the great man, BL, also known as Ben Landsgaard. How are you, my dude?
I'm great, Matt. Thanks for having me on. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Good. Welcome to the show. So, this podcast is for business owners, aspiring business owners, current business owners, whatever. It is focused for business owners. So, what would probably be a good place to start? Ben, tell us what you do. What's your business?
I am a principles-based financial planner. So, not many people know what that means when they hear principles-based financial planner. There's different based, needs based. There's different terminology out there.
Let's talk about the difference, man. You've got needs based. What are the other ones there?
When I say what I mean by principles is, Matt, have you ever worked with a financial advisor before?
I've worked with you, Ben.
Probably not a fair question. But for anyone who has worked with a financial advisor, financial planner before, I just asked them what principles has that person taught you in order to help you become and remain financially free.
What do they usually tell you?
Usually they'll look at me funny and go, I don't think I learned any principles. And the problem with that, and the reason why I use principles in my planning is there's principles to just about everything in life. I mean, you have principles in your life that help you make good decisions, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So there's principles that from studying wealthy people, successful business owners, just people who have been successful with their money, we look at what are the principles that they followed that was able to get them to that level. And so we base our planning off of those principles, rather than the traditional type of financial planning is what they call needs-based planning, where I ask you, Matt, how much income do you need when you retire?
And what do people usually say? Oh, I think I need this. I think I need, I don't know. I think I need maybe 60K a year to retire, let's say. Is that what people usually say, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of times people say, well, I really don't know. Retirement could be 20, 30 years down the road. And it's one of those things that's unpredictable.
Well, let's unpack that, because right now, like if I was part of the audience, I'd be thinking, what are these principles? So I'm actually I'm gonna do what's kind of a little bit more of a marketing or sales tactic. I'm gonna dig down on the problem first, and then we'll talk about the solution that you've got. And I think it's also really important to actually understand the problem, because then the solution makes more sense. So let's go through the traditional advice. What is it? What's this needs based really, and what's wrong with it?
Great question. So financial planning, kind of as a business, came about in around the 1970s, 1980s, and it was based off of what someone would need when they hit retirement age. And the problem with that is, back a long time ago, people had pensions, so you could get a good job with a good company and stick with them for 30 or 40 years, and they had a guarantee that they would replace your income that you were earning the last few years of you working there. And so as that started to go away, the responsibility was shifted to the employees. And so that's when financial planning was born. And the idea of needs-based planning is that, Matt, we can predict what the stock market is going to do. We just look at the history of what it's done and the average rates of return, and we know that it's going to do this. And we know that in 20 years, you're going to need $60,000 a year of income, $100,000 a year of income. So in order to hit that number, you need to contribute this much money into these accounts so that you have a nice big pile at the end that you can draw from in your retirement years.
So the idea is just take a little bit of your cash and just keep compounding invest into, I think in America it's like called what's it called? Is it called an IRA?
Yeah, an IRA, that's one of them. 401k.
401k was the one I was thinking of, yeah. And in Australia we have what's called superannuation, which is kind of a similar thing where it's essentially you put money into a pool and you can outsource, usually like for standard employees, it's the management of the super fund is separate companies, and then they manage where the stocks go. But essentially the idea is that in Australia the employers need to pay employees a specific amount, but then employees are also incentivized to voluntarily put more into super because of tax benefits, which I personally don't do because, well, Ben will probably get more into that. So Ben, what's so this idea, like we've talked about savings, what's wrong with that? Or is before we go on, is there anything else you want to add before we get into what's wrong with it?
I mean, there's lots of things that you could add on to that, but the main problem is we can't predict our needs. I can't predict what I need for income in 5 years, much less 20 or 30 years. I don't know when I'm going to get sued, so I don't know how much liability protection I need. I don't know when I'm going to break my foot like I did on Sunday.
Oh, did you? I didn't know that.
I did, yeah.
Oh, no.
So now I'm hobbling around everywhere, but I don't know when I'm going to die. I don't know when I'm going to get too sick to work and not have income. So I don't know what I need, and there's no way to predict what someone can need.
It also sounds like the mindset behind it is also very, I want to say that thing that people probably heard of the scarcity and abundance mindset. Say what you will about it, but the point is that it sounds like when you say needs based, it's almost like we're saying, what do you need to just get by?
Minimum. Yeah, minimum.
I don't know about you, but just going for bare minimum never seems like a good strategy to me.
No, when you're shooting, if you have goals, if you're shooting for minimum and you fall short, like that's pretty harsh, But if you shoot higher and if you still shoot a little short, well, maybe you still go higher than minimum.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what if there was a way to, and we can get into the principles when you want to, but the idea is to have our money working for us, but also have ourselves in the best possible position to enjoy our maximum amount of income when we retire. That's another word that I don't particularly like.
Which word?
Retire. In retirement.
Retire. Okay.
So, people ask me, like, are you a retirement income planner? Do you help people retire? And I more shoot my goals towards financial freedom. And the way I define that is having income coming in from different assets that meets or exceeds the lifestyle that I want.
So it's very subjective. There is no one size fits all.
Exactly. There's I'll ask people sometimes what their idea of retirement is, and a lot of them say, well, I don't really know if I would quit working. I'd still want to be active and be productive, but I would want to know that I have enough income coming in to cover my expenses, to cover my needs, be able to do some different things, right?
And when you speak with a lot of these people, like when I hear someone say that, what I've my immediate thought is you've probably never even thought about challenging the status quo because of whatever reason. So if you actually given a world where you actually could do whatever you want, would you actually say you want to keep working, or should I say, would you say you want to keep working where you're at now? Because I bet you that if you said, hey, if you had unlimited money and you could do whatever you want, like the world has changed, I think people's responses would be very different. And I think you would get a variation of, you would get some people who would probably say, oh, I just like to relax and not do any work and stuff. They're probably the kind of people who would probably struggle to achieve financial freedom, I think, because I think that there's so much work involved, my personal opinion at this point in time.
Absolutely.
Whereas the people who probably do start to achieve it would go, hey, when I'm older, I don't want to just be a vegetable doing nothing. I actually want to be doing stuff, but I sure as heck want to be able to choose what kind of work I do. Is that accurate, or what are your thoughts? Like, what are the themes you've noticed there?
You pretty much nailed it right on the head. That's a very common theme, that most people, like if I'm asking someone our age or a young person, and when they describe retirement, it's not when I turn 65, then I'm just turned into a couch potato and don't work and barely scrape by. They're like, if I retired today, they would be, most people that have, they want to do work that's meaningful, and maybe they can't because either they're in a job where they're kind of stuck, or they have a skill set and they're good at it and they're doing good at what they do. But yeah, like you said, most people still want to be productive. The big thing is having the cash flow, having the income to allow them to do that.
And the needs-based financial planning, one of the issues, it sounds like you're saying, is that it only aims for bare minimum, like survival.
Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't sound attractive to me, for sure. What other problems are there with the traditional needs-based financial advice approach?
Well, the other problem is you're giving up control and access of all of your money until you turn 59 and a half. And so the cool thing about like IRAs and 401ks and why people do them is a number of different reasons. One is they could be getting an employer match. Another reason is if they have a higher income, the money that gets contributed to the 401k is not taxed. So it reduces their taxable income.
Similar to here, with superannuation, there are tax benefits.
Absolutely.
But then when you withdraw money, there's tax.
Yeah, it's deferring the taxes. So you don't not pay the tax. It's just kicking the can down the road to when they retire. And then at that point.
Side question on that, with these IRAs and 401ks, is it genuinely just deferring? Like, if you do the math, I'm assuming if you do the math, you still come out with a bit more take-home pay. It's just maybe not as much as you would like. Is that right? Or is the math kind of same?
As far as, like, deferring taxes on, like, the income for that year?
Yeah, exactly. Like, or it was the idea that because it compounds, once you take it, you've got a bigger lump sum to take out. So even with the tax, you come out ahead. Is that the logic? Is that the math?
So the interesting story. The 401k was born. It's in 401k comes from the U.S. tax code. That section of the U.S. section 401k, and the guy that actually came up with it, Ted Bennett, I think is his name. I can't remember exactly, but the idea was during the 1970s and 80s in the U.S., income tax rates were through the roof. So what a lot of executives at bigger companies and high income earners would do is they would put the money into a 401k so that they didn't have to pay tax on it that year. It would save them a ton in taxes. And they would say, so in the future, hopefully tax rates come down, and then when I withdraw,
Whoa.
it's coming out at a lower tax rate.
So it's basically taking a gamble that the tax rate's going to decrease at a future date. So that's how the 401k was born.
Yes.
That is really interesting to know that context, because I had no idea that that was how it was born.
So it was originally an idea for very high income earners in a very, very high tax environment, deferring those high taxes until later.
Did it work for them?
It did.
Oh, wow.
So it did work for them, because now, right now where we are today, we are in the lowest tax rates almost in our history of our U.S. income tax. So that's a question I ask people. Do you think tax rates are going to go up in the future, down in the future, or stay the same? And the answer is always go up in the future.
So that's, you don't want to put more into your 401k then. That is really interesting. What's the IRA? How does that work?
So it's another qualified retirement plan. The 401k is done through employers, and an IRA anyone can do, regardless of if they're employed at a company and their company offers a 401k, or they could go and open up a second one and have a separate IRA for their own.
And what is the IRA? Is it something where you outsource the fund management into multiple stock options? How does it work?
So it's very, very similar to like a 401k. It's still, and there's a couple different options of those plans as well. So you have a traditional 401k and IRA where the money goes in. It's not taxed as it goes in, but it will get taxed as it comes out later. And then there's also a Roth IRA and Roth 401k where the money goes in, it gets taxed before it goes in. So then later when you withdraw, it comes out income tax free.
Interesting.
All of those types of accounts, to go back to your question, it really depends on what 401ks, you're kind of stuck with whoever the provider is, what fund options they offer. So there's index funds, mutual funds. Mutual funds are probably the most common in 401ks.
It's a complex world, isn't it?
It is.
For people who aren't specialized in it like you are, so I have a personal interest in the financial sort of stuff, but I'm not an expert any means. And even now I'm like, whoa, what's going on? So imagine for people who don't have an interest in money stuff, like they obviously want to make money. If you don't want to make money, then like you're probably doing something else other than like raising a family or supporting yourself.
Right.
But a lot of people don't want to do all that number stuff, which really there's nothing wrong with not wanting to do that. So many complex things here. Are there any other key problems with the traditional needs-based approach?
Probably one of the biggest ones is the idea of compounding interest and average rates of return. And if you listen to people talk about it, they'll say, and it's true. So I'm not going to call people liars here. You know, the S&P 500, which is a broad, our top 500 companies. So that the S&P 500 over the last 30 years has averaged a rate of return of, I think it's right around 9 to 10%.
That's actually pretty good.
So it sounds great, right?
Well, yeah, it sounds great. Enlighten me as to the issue.
This is the issue. So average rates of return don't actually equal the actual rate of return.
Oh, how does that work?
So let's say, Matt, you have $100 in an account, and in year one, your account goes up 100%. Now you have $200 in your account, right? So then let's say the next year, the account goes down by 60%. So now you're down to $80 in the account.
Okay, gotcha.
But then, so you went positive 100%, you went down 60%. So to find the average rate of return, we take 100 minus the 60, so you get 40% divided by 2. So you got an average rate of return of 20%.
But you came out negative in that scenario.
Yeah, what does your account say? It says $80, less than what you started with.
Really interesting. And I'd imagine that the advertisers of these funds, because they obviously can use that number, they're always, because they're all competing against each other, they're always going to use whatever is needed.
When you look at, if you just look at past average rates of return, they even say on the funds, past results do not guarantee future results, or whatever. I forget all the lingo. They use the fancy lingo.
Past performance is not an indication of future performance. I think that's what I've usually said.
There you go. Exactly. So, and so the problem is if people go into retirement or are just preparing for retirement, this happened in 2008, and you have even $1 million in an account and it goes down by 40%, you just took a huge hit. And now to get back, you need to do, I can't do the math that fast, but you need to do not 40% the next year. You need to do like 120% or 140%. Don't quote my math, but you get the idea.
Are you saying that it's easier for your fund to come down, but once it's down, because of the way compound interest works, it's a harder fight to bring it back up?
Exactly. You're exactly right.
Can you explain that and really dumb that down? You're speaking with me and I'm into kind of money stuff, obviously not as much as you are. If you had to explain it to someone who just hates numbers and hates money, how would you explain that?
So
hates working with money. Sorry, no one hates.
No one hates money.
Hates working with money numbers. To be clear,
yeah.
If you do, you're probably lying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you have $1 million in an account, and it goes down, and the market crashes, goes down by 50%. Now you have 500,000, right? So to get that back up to $1 million, if you do 50% next year, what's 50% of 500,000?
You're gonna be at 750.
You're gonna be at 750. So you need to do 100% rate of return in the next year to get back up. And I've seen this happen with a client. Her husband passed away right around that 2008 time frame, and she put, I think it was close to 200,000 in an account, and it wasn't until 2022 that the account actually made it back to where it was originally in 2008.
200K.
Yeah.
Oh, and that would be if the fund and everything that says average rate of return roughly 9%.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would have been better off leaving that in a savings account with interest in your bank.
Yeah.
Which doesn't keep up with inflation.
Exactly.
And I'm sure, just to be clear on this, I'm sure there's some people win with this strategy, but you're clearly stating that, I think you're demonstrating here that it's not as secure or foolproof as the modern, if you say, advertisers of these traditional financial advice strategies would actually have you believe.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and the reason that their advertising is out there so much and encouraging people to do this is because of management fees.
They get clip on the ticket, right? All these advisors.
Yeah, all of and not even the advisors, it's the institutions. It's the banks, the brokerage firms that are all, they want more money that they can charge management fees on. That's one of their 4 rules.
Like banks.
Exactly.
What were you going to say? You said 4 rules. What was that going to be?
So you actually know the 4 rules of the financial institutions.
You're gonna have to refresh my memory, but I think you did it by asking a series of questions. It was like a game.
Yes.
I'm ready. Let's go.
If you have a bank, Matt, and I'm your customer, first off, what do you need from me to operate your bank?
I need your dough. I need your money.
You need my dough. You need my dough. So once I open an account, I deposit some money in. How often do you want me depositing money into that account?
I want you depositing as often as you can and as much as you can because I
Yeah,
want that cat. I want that in my liquidity. Whatever I'm going to use that money for, I want to have more to be able to work with.
absolutely. So you want it as often as possible. And how long do you want to hold on to that money?
Mate, I don't want to let it go because the more money I got, the more I can do with. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just incentive, right? That's how economic incentive works. You're going to want more money if you're operating a business, therefore a bank as well.
yeah. No, it's simple business, you know. And you nailed the fourth one too. They want to hold on to it as long as possible. So those are the four rules. They want your money. They want it regular and ongoing. They want to hold on to it as long as possible and give back as little as possible. And if you start to look at the traditional advice out there that those institutions push, you start to see all of those things at work. It's pretty crazy.
Fascinating. Before we get into the solution,
Hmm.
is there any more on the problem? Any more things you want to drill down on before we start getting to the way to counteract this needs based approach?
I think the only other thing that I would touch on would be the magic of compound interest. So I'm going to rain on some people's parades today
Oh,
about compound interest.
let's go. I'm ready.
We're told that, put your money into the stock market. Over the years, it's going to compound interest, and it's just going to keep growing and earning interest. So with stocks, do you understand stocks a little bit?
You know what? I might not. The audience might not. Dumb it down for us.
So when you buy a stock, you're buying a piece of the company, right? You're buying a share or a small slice of a company. And what happens to the price of a stock? I mean, we watch it all the time.
I mean, it can go up and down, right? It fluctuates.
Yeah, exactly. But does it actually earn interest?
Only if it actually goes up.
It doesn't.
No, it's only the price of the unit whether that increases, but it's not like you get interest on that. It's
Exactly.
determined by the price of the unit at any given time.
Exactly.
Versus like your savings account where interest is applied every single month if you hit the conditions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the difference.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Didn't think about it like that before.
Just like with real estate, you buy a house, the house goes up in value, hopefully, but it doesn't earn interest for you. It doesn't compound interest.
No.
So the thing is, how so stocks don't pay interest. Some pay dividends. They don't earn interest. Bonds are a different security. They pay a different type of interest.
And what are bonds?
So bonds are what companies issue when they need to raise money. So they can do it with stocks or bonds, but bonds are more of a debt note. So if they need to raise $1 billion for a new facility, they'll issue bonds where you can buy a bond, Matt, and then they agree to pay you an interest rate on that bond.
Is it like a loan with a fixed interest rate?
So it's basically it's just debt. But bonds pay a simple interest. So if you have a bond that's $100 and it's paying 5%, they're going to pay you $5 in year one. The next year, they're going to pay you $5.
Oh, is it a debt in perpetuity, or do they eventually say your bond's paid off?
They eventually will pay off the bonds, and there's so many different types of bonds. It'll make your head swim.
It's a whole new world.
It's a whole new world.
So you got these bonds,
You got stocks.
you got these stocks, and then this compound interest. How you're about to rain on people's parade.
None of them pay or compound interest. They don't. They go up in value and down in value. So the only true compound interest that's out there are, like you said, savings accounts and debt, like credit cards, you have interest accruing and it adds up and it keeps adding up.
And not the way you usually want.
No.
So let's say, however, on the opposite side of the argument, so you're saying, hey, there's this myth or this promise of compound interest. However, the individual units, I assume when you say you're talking about bonds, you're talking about stocks, you're also talking about, let's say, the individual components of an investment strategy, whether it's using the S&P 500, a financial advisor that distributes everything how he or she thinks fit. But you're saying the individual units of what they're putting into technically do not compound. Is that accurate? Before I get on to my question.
That is accurate.
I could imagine the other side of the argument would be, yes, Ben, you're right. The individual units do not have compound interest. However, the mix, the strategic mix, if you will, does result in compound interest. What would you respond if someone said that?
So it still doesn't result in compound interest. The idea is that you keep buying.
Right.
You keep buying. You always buy. Your capital appreciates.
What does capital appreciates mean?
So when you buy a stock, your stock appreciates. Your bond, so
it increases in value.
Exactly.
They would only appreciate, right, though, if the company increases in value. Like if you invest in a company that goes down, it would depreciate, correct?
Correct. Exactly.
So it's not even assumed, but generally, as a general rule, you're saying they do appreciate as a general rule.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the averages, the average rates of return,
which you basically figured out doesn't really mean too much. Really interesting. Do we have more on the problem to enlighten? Do we want to dig that hole deeper before we take the audience to that deep hole and bring them out? Because at this point, I think it's going to be needing a rope, but we might even need we might need one of those tunnel elevators if we keep going. So how deep are we going with this?
I think we went pretty deep. We could keep going for days and maybe not hit the bottom.
Solution, Ben. Hit the audience with the solution.
So the solution is principles, planning based on principles instead of crossing our fingers and hoping that the S&P 500 and the stock market does well. And the principles are not something that I just made up.
Where did you get them from?
So from studying the most successful people in the world.
Though that seems like a good case study.
Warren Buffett, Andrew Carnegie. There's a really good book out there called The Millionaire Mind, where over 25 years they studied Thomas Stanley. He studied, I forget how many millionaires he studied, but he went on just to see what are the things that they do. How do they invest? And a lot of people will say, well, Warren Buffett's the greatest stock market investor ever. And my answer to that is he doesn't invest in the stock market like we are taught to. He bought Berkshire Hathaway. So the thing is it's built on hard work. That's the principle of hard work, time, and effort.
So that's the first principle.
That's not even the first principle, but we're getting there. Anything that's worthwhile takes a lot of time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears. Would you agree?
I mean, so far that's what I've found.
That's what I found too. And so, if the best investments are not things that are easy, convenient, and don't take any kind of learning, expertise, or time. But that's the lie that Wall Street is selling us. Put your money here. Don't think about it. Don't look at it. Don't worry about it. We got you covered.
And from a marketing and sales perspective, I can see how that would take off.
Oh, yeah.
Because it ticks the box of perceived, probably people who've watched Alex Hormozy or read some of Alex Hormozy's books have seen his little graph thing of how to make a really good offer.
Yeah.
I can't remember all the elements, but the concept of perceived likelihood of outcome with least amount of effort and sacrifice. And that's essentially the offer.
Yeah.
We're going to help you get this financial freedom or this financial outcome without you having to do any work.
Yeah.
Probably sounds a bit too good to be true.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's great marketing from the institutions. But when you just look at the people who have reached a high level of success, successful business owners, they did not just hand their money over to somebody and say, manage it for me. Let me just throw it all into Wall Street. And, you might have a few outliers who made it that way. But for the most part, it takes a lot of effort, time, and hard work. And so,
yeah, right.
Getting into the 5 principles that I teach.
Let's go.
Clients.
We're 40 minutes into the podcast and we're about to get into finally the first principle.
The first one is save 15% or more of your income.
Wow.
And by save, this is another good marketing trick that Wall Street has done, is they've confused the word saving and investing.
There's a difference.
There's a big difference between the two. Saving is safe. It's not in 401k. It's not in IRA.
It's liquid, right? As in you can access it if you wanted to.
Exactly. It's guaranteed. It's liquid. It's accessible. And so that's rule number 1. Save 15% or more.
Let's unpack that a little bit. That's a really interesting rule. Now, Ben, if I say to you, dude, save 15%, brother, I got a family and I've got mortgage or I've got rent, I'm struggling to save 5%. How do I fulfill that principle there?
I just ask people how, and I'll usually ask them, like, what are the things that they want to accomplish, and what in your future, what are your goals, what are you wanting to accomplish, and how important is that to you? Is it important enough to put saving 15% or more and paying yourself before you pay anyone else?
I must admit, I wasn't going from the mindset angle. I was actually more going from, let's say you got a situation where the mindset's right.
Yeah.
They actually are managing finance as well, but because their expenses genuinely are that high, their current income does not allow for a 15% saving. What is the strategy that someone needs to take in that situation to achieve the first principle?
So yeah, that's a great question. The the first thing is, I would say, start saving something. So even if you're not hitting the 15% right away, it's like atomic habits. Start small, even if it is 5% or even less. But if you start the habit, get it going, and then work on increasing your income so that you can get that savings rate up there.
So it's income generation. That's the equation, right? Like with this principle that you teach, the first principle, and this is also probably good for the audience because there's always a solution to every problem, right?
Yep.
And I would probably say, if I did my math, I don't think that I'm saving 15% of my income at this point in time. But based on hearing this, I want to.
Yeah.
Now, I can take 2 options here. I can say, impossible. Can't do it on my current income. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Or the second thing is, cool, how do we start working to achieving that? The equation is the more money you make, the more you can save.
Absolutely.
Because there's only so much you can save.
Yeah.
If your income's limited, there's only so much you can save, right?
Yeah.
If I add an extra 20k to my annual income, I can save additional 20k a lot easier than saving 20k on my, let's say, current income, right? That's the equation. So is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah. And I won't get into like all of the strategies that we use to help people achieve that here, just it would take too long.
It has to be bespoke, right? You could make a lot of money as a carpenter, or you can make a lot of money as running, I don't know, a digital marketing agency.
Yeah.
Or as an employee that can just keep climbing up the ranks and maybe has some equity. Anyway, so point 1, the first principle, save 15% of your income. Got it. What's the second principle?
The second principle is maximum protection.
What does that mean?
What that means is our protection is kind of like the moat to the castle.
That water thing around a castle?
The water thing around the castle, exactly.
That was full of sewerage because they didn't have modern plumbing?
Yeah, and alligators. No, I don't know if they had alligators or not.
Side point here, people. If you want to you need a moment to be grateful about something and have some gratitude, just be grateful that you don't live in that castle where every single day you'd wake up to the smell of pee and urine all around you. Just one good thing. Life might not be as bad as it might feel like sometimes.
Modern life is great. Modern plumbing is great too.
I like modern plumbing, especially when it's my landlord that needs to pay to fix it. Anyway,
what we're gonna do in maximum protection is, what are all the things that can go wrong when you're working towards becoming financially free? And there's, I mean, an infinite number. Natural disasters, illness, injury, death, a lawsuit.
Lose your job from COVID.
Lose your job. And so that's a very in-depth one, you know, when we work with people, is going through all their different ways of how they're protected. You know, because it only takes one of those things to completely wipe us out and ruin our financial plan for the rest of our life.
So when you think about that, it just goes to show that your financial situation could actually be very, very fragile.
Yeah.
Especially if you've only got like one type of job and limited skills and stuff. But we'll probably get into that a bit later, I'm guessing. Really interesting. How do we protect ourselves financially?
So that's, you know, different. Probably the biggest one that we see is in the liability area.
Is that like where someone could trip on something on your property and then you could have to pay them a negligence claim sort of thing?
Yep, or a car accident, things like that. And that's where we probably have some of the biggest risk, but it's one of those things that's very, very neglected.
Isn't third-party car insurance mandatory in the US?
It is, but the minimums are very low.
So a lot of people might think they've got their insurance covered, but actually I don't. Just a quick one for the audience as well. So you're probably thinking Ben's in the US. Oh, he sounds like he's from the US. Matt does not sound like he's from the US. I don't know what he sounds
Definitely
like.
Definitely
not. And you're like, why did Matt work with Ben at all? So Ben gave me some principles-based education, which I had to take, and I figured out that through my superannuation, I thought, oh, I'm covered. I've got my TPD. So is it TPD or temporary or permanent disability? I think it might be. Don't quote me on that acronym. Income protection, life insurance. So my wife, my family can get paid if I die and then I lose that income's lost.
Absolutely.
When I first got this sorted, I just did like the bare minimum through online and thought, hey, this is awesome. I've done the stock standard. I'm covered. I was not covered properly. When I looked into it, through what Ben taught me, is I figured out, oh wow, if I die, my wife gets, I think it was like 200K. Now I've got to set it up so if I die, she gets 3.6 mil or whatever it is. It's in the 3 millions, which is so it just goes to show that protection isn't protection, and this is why you got maximum protection. So
exactly,
just because you maybe ticked a box, if you didn't actually understand what you were doing in terms of your protection, you're probably going to want to speak to someone like Ben or look into it deeper, because the difference between your wife getting $200,000, your wife and your family getting $200,000, and your wife getting $3 million is a very big difference there. It's
not about needs. It's about how do we want our family to be when, if something bad happens, what do we want to happen?
And it's a good feeling being able to hit your head on the pillow every night going, hey, if something really bad happens, I know that I've done pretty much everything properly and gone through a process with like whether it's professional guidance or education, to know that is protected. So I think that's even just on a day-to-day, that mental security is a very good thing to have.
Yeah.
Ben, what's the third principle?
The third principle is replacement of assets at death. And so this principle is a little bit hard for people to grasp.
Okay.
but it's having a plan to replace our assets when we die, and what the reason we would want that.
Is this an estate plan? Is that what that does?
This is so it's about having a permanent death benefit of life insurance, a permanent death benefit equal to the amount of assets that you have.
Right. Okay. Let's go through this.
Yeah, so the reason for that is, if, Matt, you have a car, you buy this car and Australia passes some crazy law that says you can only get one set of tires for this car for the entire life of the car.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah. How often are you going to drive that car?
Probably not as often because you'd be so scared, right?
Right. So in retirement, if you have, let's say you have $1 million, and you know that has to last you and your spouse through 30 years of retirement, how are you going to spend that money? Are you going to spend it very freely, or are you going to hold on to it a little bit tighter, knowing that there's nothing more coming in?
You're going to be scared of where the next thing's coming from. It's like when you know you have a finite amount of resources that cannot be replenished.
Yeah.
Like, if there's a really nice chocolate or a really nice whiskey, whatever it is, and you know that you can't ever buy it again, you're probably going to want to really treasure it. Or if you know you can just buy it from a shop another time, you're going to go for it.
Absolutely. And so the principle is, in that scenario, that person has, $1 million of assets, but also has $1 million of permanent death benefit of life insurance. So they know that when they pass away, all of the assets will be replaced by the permanent death benefit.
Whoa.
Knowing that all of those assets are going to be replaced when either spouse passes, what does that allow you to do with that $1 million now?
Well, you could spend it way more freely because you know that it's going to be, you know that when you die. So hang on, how does that work? Do the assets get sold? Can we walk through the mechanics of that?
Yeah, so it's really depending on what someone has. If it's a business owner that sells a business, someone that owns real estate and sells it off in their later years, or if someone's using the traditional route of money going into a 401k or something, and now they have a big pile of money in there, they're going to draw that money as income throughout retirement. And so they're just getting spent. The assets are just getting spent. But if you have both spouses with a permanent death benefit equal to what the assets are, Matt, you pass away, you don't have to worry about your wife not having any income or running out of assets because she's taken care of. Same thing, vice versa for you. Or if you want to leave a small estate or something to your kids, or a large one.
Ben, I'm a bit lost here. You're going to have to forgive my puny brain. The audience is probably thinking Matt's so slow, he doesn't get it yet. So hang on, with this strategy. So does it work? Let's say I've got my wife and she and I both have, I don't know, assets. Let's say I've got 3 properties, which I don't have, but let's just pretend I had 3 properties. Now, let's say I die. Are you saying that what will then happen is with the right life insurance plan, they will say, hey, your 3 properties equal, I don't know, let's just say 5 mil. Does that mean then that we get 5 mil in cash and retain the assets, which is we retain the properties, or is it different?
No, so this idea is that instead of trying to hold on to those 3 houses,
they get sold.
You sell them and you live off the income.
Right, so it's a plan, it's not an insurance. Okay, sorry, I mixed it. So the plan is, this is the plan. Matt dies, death plan gets activated, so that boom, all these assets get sold, so now my wife has a nice bit of cash, rather than these assets that she doesn't know what to do with.
Yeah, and as you both are living together, you know already that Matt dies, Christina dies, death benefits coming. I can spend all my properties and money as freely as I want.
Let's say I was to die. My wife can decide if she wants to get that death benefit, or she might say, actually, let's keep the asset and let it increase in value. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
This isn't like a will where you die and then X has to happen and Y has to happen. What you're saying, Ben, is more you have a plan so that if something should happen, you know that you've prepared your assets in such a way, which I'm going to think is going to require continuous monitoring to make sure that the assets are valuable, if that makes sense, to make sure that the property is maintained, whatever it is. But the point is you're having this constant strategy where, hey, if one of us dies, we've got these assets that we can sell, and then we're going to get cash from it. So we know we can be more aggressive in, let's say, maybe our other investment strategies, or in business, or even maybe just living a life that we want to live. Is that right, or have I missed something?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's all about flexibility.
Brilliant.
Sell it off, spend it. That's the biggest thing, is having the really that letter from your teacher saying that you have permission to spend all your assets while you're alive.
The theme I'm getting here is that the principles that you're teaching give you control.
Absolutely.
Let's recap here. So first principle, which is save 15%.
Mm-hmm.
Second principle is maximum protection, or was that the third principle?
Maximum protection. Yep.
Third principle is have what did you call it? Like a death plan in place. What's it called?
Yeah, replacement of assets at death.
Replacement of assets at death, which really is just the ability to be able to replace assets at death. It's not a mandatory thing that happens. Like, you don't set it like a will.
Right.
What's the fourth principle?
So the fourth principle is going to go back to liquidity and saving. It's maintaining 6 months to 1 year of your income somewhere liquid and available. So,
wow.
So if you're making 100K, you're maintaining 60K to 100K, always liquid and accessible somewhere where you can access it.
That's a tough one.
Very tough one.
When I say it's a tough one, obviously that depends on what you're actually earning.
Mm-hmm.
I think the point is you work towards that, because, like, even in my situation now, I would say that there's, like, if my income were not to increase, that would literally be impossible. Therefore, what's the solution? Well, the math is very simple. Just income generate more, right?
Right.
So that's the solution there. Why 6 months? What is it behind this principle? Why 6 months, and where did that come from?
So the idea for 6 months, and we purposely say income and not expenses, because if you only save 6 months of your expenses, now you're going into that shrink mode again.
So it's a mindset thing as well with this.
It is. So having 6 months is, if I lose my job and I can't find another job for 6 months, I'm good.
So it's not like if I have 6 months of, oh, we can just scrape by. It's like we have 6 months of being able to live the same way that we're living.
Exactly.
So minimal disruption as we figure out the next move.
Exactly.
So that's the formula. Interesting.
And the reason we say 6 months to 1 year, 6 months being the lower end of the spectrum, is because the best investments typically require cash and lots of it. So having an additional 6 months of your income saved somewhere opens you up for opportunity.
Right.
If you invest in rental properties, or if you want to buy a franchise or open a business, or buy a business, whatever you want to do, or there's any kind of investment opportunity, you've got a full year of income stored somewhere. So if you've got an opportunity, you can dump some in there, and you're still in a good liquid position if something bad happens.
I think a good way to dumb that down as well, for anyone who needs it, is think of an item that you want to buy that's going to be really helpful to your life, or just improve your quality of life, whether it's a gaming console, whether it's a new computer, whether it's like one of the expensive piano things in the background. if a good sale comes about where you can save 50%, if you've got that liquid cash available, in the long run, you're going to actually come out saving 50%. Whereas if you didn't have the cash, but then you're going to buy it eventually anyway, well, you're going to pay that extra 50% only because you didn't have the cash then and there. Same principle, but you're able to apply it to investments that actually cash flow, don't just produce amazing music because an amazing musician is playing them. I'm just kidding on that one. Ben, is that right? Is that right, or have I missed a few things?
Yeah, no, you hit it right on the head. Hit it right on the head. Opportunity.
Fifth, we're up to the fifth, aren't we?
Yep.
What's the fifth financial principle?
Fifth and final.
Ooh.
Fifth and final is the velocity of money, and this is a process. It's really what the financial institutions do versus what they teach us to do, and that is creating streams of income, having your dollars do more than just one job for you, and having them send out more little dollars to work and keep the money flowing back to you.
So it's leverage, right? You're basically getting your dollar to multiply, really.
Yes.
Let's say $1 an employee. It's like, imagine having an employee that doesn't just do your sales and marketing, but they're able to do delivery as well. Is it kind of like that? Not that you would do that. Like, it's not a good setup for a business usually, but that's a analogy there.
Exactly. So it's really creating that portfolio of income producing assets. And so that's a process.
What's an example? Give us a concrete example of how you can make $1 or $1 do multiple jobs.
One is a lot of real estate people. I'll use a real estate example, but going and purchasing a house and then rehabbing the house, getting the value to go up, and then pulling the money back out of the house by a loan, and then going and doing it again and again and again. And so now you're that's what a lot of people will do. They'll buy it as a rental property.
House flipping.
Yeah, or house flipping. And so you're taking that asset, you're investing in it, and then it's cash flowing, and then you use leverage to go and do it again. And then you just keep growing all those cash flow producing machines for you.
Exceptionally interesting. And Ben, we're at about 1 hour. We were going to go through more about like even what did Ben do before he became a financial advisor, what got him into financial advice. I think we're going to end it here. I think that's a separate conversation, but yeah, this has been really good. Ben, I'm going to ask the question. You've thrown a lot of really good information. This could actually be even quite overwhelming for some people.
Yeah,
because it could also be like, whoa, like I'm not even close to that. You could even be thinking, but Warren Buffett, like, one, that guy's way more obsessed with money than I am, and two, he lived in a different time. He's probably way smarter, and three, maybe he just had connections that I don't. Which, by the way, I would say are valid to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, for someone who has just heard what you've heard and thinks, okay, I think Ben's right, but I have no idea where the heck do I start. What do you say? What do you say to those people?
I would say talk to somebody who is doing what you want to do. That's really how I got into this business. Had an interest in it. If you want to start a business, talk to a business owner. Ask them good questions. Offer to take them out for coffee. If you want to get into real estate investing, find somebody who's doing that. Whatever your thing is, start learning about it. Talk to those people, and then start taking some action. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but learn as much as you can. And by learning and educating ourselves, we reduce our investment risk by doing that. So just learn as much as you can about what you want to do, and talk to people who have done it or who are in the process of doing it. And you'd be amazed at how many people are so willing to share.
I remember once that I put an ad out onto Facebook on the meta ads to attract leads for my business, and I was just showing the results that I was getting for some ads I was running. And someone else saw that ad and sent me an email saying, "Oh, I want to know how you're doing that. I'm happy to pay for an hour of your time." I'm like, "No." I'm like, I just had to call him and just spoke for 45 minutes, and now he actually does work. He actually is on the books as a contractor in my team and does work for us. This is another thing, by the way, I think you'll find, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think that once you're in that, when you're not in that world of whether it's business and getting to kind of really trying to achieve some form of freedom, whether it's financial freedom, but, let's call it for what it is. Trying to achieve financial freedom.
Mm-hmm.
When you're not really in that world and you're still in the, I'm just an employee showing up to my day job, but then after that I clock off and then I do nothing, like literally nothing that relates to income generation, like which I used to be, which isn't morally wrong in and of itself, but I would say that in today's day and age and the way economics is set up, if you want to have a family and things like that, it's probably not the most prudent thing to be neglecting.
Yeah.
When you're in that world, you think, oh, these people who are successful, they must be so money hungry. Like if I ask for help, they're gonna say, oh, you're gonna have to pay me. I'm gonna, what's the word? Take you to the cleaners just for some information. It's like, it's not like that. Because also, don't get me wrong, there probably are some people who would do that. And then there's some people who literally won't speak with you because they probably have decided, I can't do it because I've got things that need to be done, and that's valid.
Absolutely.
But you're probably, one, if you do get someone rude to you, well, that's their problem. But two, you might be surprised that someone's happy to help because they've been through it themselves.
Yeah.
Or they're going through it themselves. It's like, so they can empathize with that challenge.
Mm-hmm.
When you are asked, where do we start? You didn't say, look into 401ks. You didn't say, which you obviously talked against, but you didn't say look into different investment strategies. You didn't say start learning all these numbers. What you said there is do something to help you to help you build the skills or knowledge to income generate. That highlights to me that you don't even need to be obsessed about this whole, the money, finances and stuff to achieve financial freedom. Is that right?
That's right. Exactly.
Ben, this has been an excellent conversation. Is there anything else you want to leave with the audience in closing?
The last word I would say is invest in you, invest in what you can control.
Brilliant.
And learn.
And Ben, how can people get in contact with you?
Probably the best way is you can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Ben Landsgaard. You can find me and message me on there. Or you can shoot me an email. I'll share it with Matt, and maybe Matt can just share it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll pop it in the show notes.
That's probably the two best ways to get a hold of me.
For anyone who's here, who's on the fence, like, oh, do I just send Ben an email? The worst thing that's going to happen is he doesn't reply because he's busy. What's likely going to happen is he's probably going to get back to you when he can, and it might be the first step in changing your life there. So definitely something to do if you're listening to this and you haven't got, if you've learned something from this that you didn't know before, you probably want to chat with Ben about it. Ben, thank you again. It's been great, and we'll probably see you on the show next time because I think there's even more info we could unpack there. Anyone, if you want to know more about Ben, what got him into this or anything else, got any specific questions, chuck it in the comments, and I'm sure that it's something that can be addressed later. Thank you, Ben, for coming onto the show.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it, man.